Hi everyone, it's your favourite Atomic Blonde with this week's Nerdy Weekly Roundup. Oh, episode 7. God, there's only 2 left. So this week, Jen. We start with a montage of Jen. I think, maybe, who knows. So the cuck she met at the wedding last week, she's like going out on some dates with him. And we see a montage of like her like 2 or 3 dates, and she's all happy and giddy, basically behaving like a 17-year-old. It's all very strange. I think the only thing we can deduce is that the writers haven't been on a date since they were like 17 or 18, because these are no dates I've ever seen. So they go out on a couple of dates. She doesn't kiss him, or there's no like intimacy in any way, shape or form. Gets to the 3rd date, Jen puts out and bangs him without even previously kissing him. So it just confirms everything we see in the previous episodes, that Jen's just a bit of a slut. Good old Jen. After said bang, Guy, Josh, basically ghosts her, and you saw that coming like a mile away. We then get pretty much, 10 minutes or something of her just like looking at her phone and waiting for a text, and a text doesn't come. And, it's like 3 days later and she's in the office, and her paralegal, who still isn't doing any work, surprise, surprise, basically sort of says, stop looking at the phone, it'll be fine, he'll be in touch and whatever. And we get another opportunity for the writers to put the boot in about how much they hate the fans. So last week we saw the online memes, and it was like, oh yeah, I don't care what people think about me online. They haven't even got the guts to tell me to my face. So yeah, it's just another dig at the fans. Oh, I say fans because really, let's face it, we're not fans. This show stinks. And they just don't like the fact we're pointing out that this show sucks balls big time. Anyway, Jen gets a call from Amir, the Abomination's parole officer. Something's up with his inhibitor. Would he go to the retreat with him? So he's got Hulk protection in case he's the Abomination, because apparently there's not enough funding for a policeman to go with him. Whatever. She goes out there. Everything's fine. He just basically got zapped by an electric fence while he was trying to save a chicken. Fixes the inhibitor. Probation officer leaves. Jen's still there talking to him again, still trying to get a signal on her phone because she hasn't had a text. And we get another 5 minutes of Jen wandering around the estate trying to get a text. Then it's basically at this retreat, there's just a load of other guys there who are all a bit freaks. There's one who thinks he's a vampire and a porcupine. I don't know why they thought these were good characters to come up with. You got Bullman, who's some experiment. I mean, it's just proper cringe. And I know these are all cartoon characters, but these like cartoon characters, if you know what I mean. So anyway, they all like rally around Jen, and then one of the guys there was the guy that attacked her with the Asgardian work tools in episode, I don't know, was it 2 or something? And they can't even trust us to remember, so they literally have to go. She goes, previously on, and shows us a clip because we're all morons because we can't remember that far back. To be fair, I have probably wiped it from my memory because it's just, really not, retainable information. So they basically then a therapy circle, which is just an opportunity for Jen to basically again reflect how we now know for a fact that the writers weren't the popular girls in school. They couldn't get dates, they weren't athletic. Colour me surprised. Couldn't get boyfriends. Weird that. So anyway, it all just basically culminates in like them all saying how brilliant Jen is, and Jen don't need no man. Jen delete Josh's number and we'll go kill him. And so Jen's like, yay, deletes Josh's number, pat on the back. Let's just feed the narcissism and just remind her how brilliant she is. And Jen's great, and Jen doesn't need She-Hulk, but they're all the same person, and we love Jen as much as we love She-Hulk. So She-Hulk's fixed, Jen's fixed, car's fixed, off she goes. Then we get a flashback to the night that they done the dirty. And lo and behold, didn't see this coming. Josh Cuck is a bad guy. Who'd have thunked it? So you see him copying her phone. He then sends a text implying that he's got her blood and he's buggered off. That was it. That was the episode. I could barely keep up. It was just coming at me so fast with so much complicated storyline. Jesus, this show is just so bad. And all we basically get is a therapy session for the writers to just vent how unfair life is because they weren't the popular girls. And thankfully, still no Daredevil. Woohoo! It's pretty much going to face it. He's going to be introduced at probably, a credits or something next week, and he'll be in the last episode just to see his character completely ruined before we go into a show where his character will be ruined even more. Thank God, 2 episodes left. I'm really not sure my brain can take much more. Anywho, let's move on to Andor. And boy, is it still boring. These shows, I think, are like 30 minutes, 40 minutes. Well, the previous ones were. I didn't even look how long this one was. But it felt about like 3 hours. And nothing happened. We get introduced to some new characters. But the upshot is obviously the repercussions of last week of them all being completely useless and Andor escape and guards getting killed is exactly the thing they were trying to avoid, is that then brought Imperial attention to the place. And now Imperial troops are going to be staged there, and the security force isn't trusted to look after the town planet anymore. So good work, guys. Andor's obviously left with old Stellan. He's then roping him into some sort of heist against the Empire. He takes him to a planet, introduces him to some rebels, basically just dumps him off there and says, yeah, we need you. We've got more chance of doing this heist if you're involved. And Andor's like, no. Oh, okay then. So he agrees to join these rebels. He tries to ingratiate himself with them. Doesn't work particularly well. They're all a bit like, oh my God, you can't introduce someone at this late hour, and how can we trust him? And you'll trust him because I trust him and we need him. Okay. So they trust him. Andor agrees to do this heist, even though it appears to be suicide. And while all this is happening on that planet, we go to Coruscant, which actually looks amazing. It does look very good. Like I said, this show visually is very, very good. We're introduced to Momra, whatever. Mothma, that's her name. Who's a senator, who's working with Stellan. She's sort of been funding the rebellion. But she's being watched. That's about it, really. And we find out Stellan's like some antiques dealer and has a shop, and that's his front for the rebellion. And he basically has like big hair and jewelry, so you wouldn't recognize him when he's doing his rebellion stuff. Then we get introduced to the woman who was coming out with all the stupid nonsense before the show come out. Imperial Karen. So Imperial Karen, also known as Miro, wants some information about what happened on last week's episode. She goes up against the lieutenant. He says, no, you can't have the evidence. It's out of your jurisdiction. She says, I'm entitled to have it. He says, no. She says, I want to see the manager. They go see the manager. their boss, the major, whatever his name is. And he basically turns around and says, no, focus on your own area and stop getting involved in other people's stuff. His reports are in, yours aren't. Just crack on. So she's all like, but I'm right and brilliant, and I can't see why nobody else can see my brilliance. And so Imperial Karen's nose is out of joint, but she's obviously going to press on to find the rebellion. Good for her. And that was the episode. That was pretty much it. Now, I've heard that episode 5 is where it really kicks in and it's going to blow us all away. I hope so, because, geez, there's no way I'm going to make it through 16 episodes of this if that's the extent of the storylines. It's such a shame because it does look like it. Visually, it's a lovely looking show. We actually had TIE fighters this week. We also had the speed bikes out of Return of the Jedi. So there's a few more Star Warsy things in there, and obviously Coruscant looks very, very much Star Wars. It's very well produced and acted, as I said. It's dull as dishwater still. Again, if you're loving the show, fantastic. I'm glad you've got something good to watch or that you're enjoying. It's just really not ticking the boxes for me right now. I will give episode 5 a go if this is the one that it all kicks in and something exciting happens. Let's hope so, because I really, really need to crank up the pace. Because, 16 episodes of this. God, if I need something to watch before to get me off to sleep, Amber's the one for you. Okay. The part of the show that I always enjoy. House of the Dragon. So a lot happened this episode. Again, I think it's still, people still like the episode. Obviously, this is where we see the biggest time jump and the new actresses coming into play, Alicent and Rhaenyra. I think they've both done a really good job. I mean, Alicent looks more like her previous incarnation than Rhaenyra does. But overall, I think the actresses are really good. They seem to have gone a bit northern, but that's fine. Not a problem with that, with the old accents. But overall, a good episode, and you can just really, really see this show building now. We're on a crash course for Civil War. So anyway, the show starts with Rhaenyra giving birth. And this transpires that this is her third son. And basically, no sooner has she given birth, word comes down that the Queen wants to see the child. Rhaenyra stands up and goes, and they obviously trying to cut the umbilical cord and wrapping the baby up, and then obviously she's actually standing there like she has to pass the afterbirth, and there's some very squelchy noises going on in this episode. It was quite gross. But anyway, but she's determined to go take the baby to show the Queen. Her husband, Laenor, turns up. He's all like, congratulations, it's a boy. And he's like, what are you doing? Where are you going? She's she wants to see him. So he basically helps Rhaenyra walk up to the Queen. I mean, it's obviously up flights of steps. I mean, she's literally had the baby. She's probably torn. Who knows? Don't really want to think about it. But this poor woman's exhausted, and she's carrying the baby up all these flights of steps so the Queen can see it. And obviously the Queen wants to see it, as we basically learn. All of Rhaenyra's children have brown hair. They're very white. And obviously her husband has silver hair and is sort of mixed race. So it's very, very apparent that these aren't his children. But it's nobody discusses it. The king's in complete denial and won't admit it. So anyway, so the Queen looks at the child, even though it's a newborn baby. It's got obviously you can see it's got dark hair or darker hair than obviously a Targaryen would have, or Valorian. So the Queen is just livid. And a lot of this episode is really the Queen just kind of trying to push the point that Rhaenyra is having extramarital affairs, and that these children are just an affront to the crown, basically. We see there's an episode, and then we move on to a segment where you've basically got her two eldest sons. Obviously now, like I said, it's a 10-year time jump, so Aegon is probably around 14, 15 years old, and then he's his younger brother. And you also find out that they've had a daughter at some point. I think looking at the ages, probably like the middle daughter and then a younger son. And they're in the dragon pit. So it's Alicent's two eldest children and Rhaenyra's two eldest children, and they're being obviously trained and bonding with their dragons and learning how to command the dragons. Now the Aemond, who's Aegon's brother, doesn't have a dragon, so that would imply that obviously his egg never hatched. And so the cousins and Aegon basically say, "Oh, you've got a dragon, you've got a dragon," and he's like really excited. And then basically this pig comes out of the pit with like wings tied on it, and they're all just basically laughing at him. And he's like really not happy and runs off and basically goes to tell his mother. So he seems like a bit of a mummy's boy, this one. He's just sort of saying, and obviously Alicent loathes Rhaenyra's children, blames Rhaenyra's children. She goes to the king and says, "Oh, they've been doing this," and the king's just like, "Oh, they're just kids and whatnot, So, but she's like, "Yeah, well, and again, she sort of brings up this topic about the kids not being Rhaenyra's husbands, and again, the king just shuts it down and basically sort of says to her, like, you can't keep discussing this. There's going to be massive ramifications and consequences if you keep pushing this. You're not to discuss anymore." And he's already told her this before. But obviously, basically, just see Alicent getting more and more wound up and angry by all of this. She speaks to Kristen Cole, who now is what sort of in her camp or works for her or her protector. And we really sort of see how bitter Kristen's become and calls Rhaenyra some quite see you next Tuesday names. And there's a real bitterness and hatred there now of Cole, and they're basically just saying, look, she's flaunting the fact that her children clearly aren't her husband's, and she's flaunting her authority and her station kind of thing. So you can really sort of see this resentment and anger building, and obviously this is going to have huge repercussions if it's voiced and it's sort of really pushed that she sort of stepped out. The Queen goes to see Aegon. It was butt naked in his room, basically fapping. And she just bursts in on him, and he's like mortified and kind of gets under the covers. And you really get the impression that he's very much like his father. He's quite easygoing. He likes the girls, and really doesn't take his station very seriously. He kind of knows he's not going to be king because obviously it'd be Rhaenyra's going to be queen and it'd be her children. And he's just really not bothered by all the politics. And Alicent just basically loses it at him, saying because obviously you're nearly an adult now. You've got to take this seriously. Everybody in the realm knows that one day you're going to be king. So she's basically, talking quite treasonous. And he's like, and she's like, look, your life is in danger. And he's sort of like, what you're about? She goes like, Rhaenyra will dispose of you if there's any threat to her rule. And he seems like quite shocked and taken aback by this. And he's just like, well, I won't get in her way. And she's like, well, it doesn't matter. The sheer fact you exist is a claim to her throne. So basically, you've got to get a grip and you've got to grow up right now and start taking this seriously. That the Queen's doing everything she can to try and protect him. He's just like, it's all big gain to him. We then sort of see Daemon for the first time. So obviously he just disappeared after the fight in last week's episode, after the wedding, just before the wedding. We find out that he's actually married Laenor's sister, and she's heavily pregnant with their third child. He has two daughters, which obviously are very clearly Valyrian and Targaryen, and they have dragons. They're a bit of they sort of make remarks that they're travelers. They don't seem to really have a kingdom now, and they're visiting and staying with the Prince Rhaegyros, who sort of makes them an offer to stay, and they like will pay them gold, and basically if they sort of become protectors of his lands, because they have 3 dragons, and potentially they'll have 4 dragons once the next child's born. And Daemon's sort of quite considering this, and he's like, we'll entertain the offer, where you get from Laena that she doesn't want to. She actually wants to go home. We see a scene where we've got Daemon teaching his daughter High Valyrian. So you kind of see like Daemon's quite changed. He's like obviously not constantly scheming or trying to get power. He's now a father. He appears to be quite a good father as well, a loving father. And he does actually care for his new wife. Whether it goes as far as that he loves her, we're not 100% clear, but he definitely cares about her, and obviously holds her in esteem and treats her so better than his previous wife. So they seem to have quite a nice, loving relationship. And Daemon's saying just really not the ambitious, ruthless person that he was previously. It's almost like he's just looking now just to have a good life, money, wealth, but sort of away from all the politics, and just be a father and a husband, which is a massive sort of turnaround from what we've seen previously. And again, this is where sort of Laenor sort of says, like, she wants to go back to Driftmark. She wants to have a baby there. She really doesn't want to stay there. She doesn't want them just to be like sort of wealthy landowners and die, in excess. She wants to go home and ultimately have a dragon rider's death, which has been a sort of foreshadowing as to what happens later on. We then go back and we find Cole. Criston Cole is training the boys, Rhaenyra's boys and Alicent's boys. And also Harwin's there, who is basically the father of Rhaenyra's children. And again, we sort of really see this bitterness coming out of Cole. He's obviously giving more attention to Alicent's children and really goading the kids into fighting. He sort of pits Aegon against Rhaenyra's eldest, but there's obviously quite a big age gap there, so it's not really a fair fight. And he's just very much, well, in real battle, it's not fair, and you've got to learn to defend yourself. And he's really sort of goading the kids into this, and Aegon like knocks down the Rhaenyra's eldest, and Cole's just like telling him to like keep going, keep him on the ground, don't let him get up, kick it, And this is where basically Harwin kind of steps in, and he ends up punching Cole, which obviously Cole's a knight and a protector of the queen. This is like a big no-no. But Cole kind of goads him into it, saying, oh, it's quite strange that you're here even watching the princes train. It's kind of something, that you do for a brother or a cousin or maybe a son. So obviously he punches him and repeatedly punches Cole on the floor. And it's like, you say that again, because everybody knows the repercussions of making these kind of accusations. And Harwin's kind of dragged away. And Cole's just on the floor sort of sniggering and spitting out blood. He's like, yeah, that's what I thought, kind of thing. So he's turned into a really sort of nasty character. And I think he's only going to get worse as the show goes on. One of the sort of ladies in waiting goes and tells Rhaenyra that there's been an incident in the courtyard. She sort of goes to find Harwin and hears her arguing with his father, Lionel, who's obviously the king's right-hand man. And basically Lionel's like just fuming, like, you can't hit Cole, you can't lay hands on the prince. What are you doing? We're already vulnerable, and you're bringing like shame on the house. And Harwin's, oh yeah, how have I done that then? Because nobody can really voice what is known by everybody. And basically Lionel just say, look, the only thing protecting you and her right now is the king. And he's like blind love for his daughter, and he refuses to see what everybody can see. So ultimately then sort of Lionel goes to the king and sort of says that he needs to resign, and is trying to sort of say without saying why he needs to resign, and sort of bring a shame on it. And Alicent's there and sort of encouraging him to voice this accusation kind of thing. And obviously he's not going to do that, because that will mean that Rhaenyra can be banished and his son would be killed. potentially, or imprisoned and killed. So the king won't have any of it. He won't accept the resignation. He's just kind of like, we're not having this discussion. So Lionel says that basically he's going to, Harwin needs to leave. He needs to go back to the family castle kind of thing, and sort of take on his roles there, and sort of, become ready to rule that part of the kingdom, which the king agrees to. So we see Lionel and Harwin heading off to their homelands, and he says goodbye to Rhaenyra and the children. And the eldest then says to his mother, like, is Harwin Strong my father? To which, she finally realizes like how obvious and blatant this all is, and how much trouble they're in. Because the kid's like, well, am I a bastard? Because that's like obviously the worst thing you can be. And she doesn't answer him in that. She just says, you're a Targaryen, and that's all that matters. But obviously this is going to cause massive repercussions. We then go back to Daemon and his wife, Laenor's in labor. And she's having a bad labor. The baby basically won't come out, as the midwives, the men, but basically saying, I've done everything I can. Kind of at the end of my knowledge, there's not really anything else we can do. The only thing we could do is a C-section, a cesarean, but there's no guarantees the baby will live. And Daemon says, well, would the mother survive? And he's like, no, it's unlikely, So Daemon shakes his head, and he's like, no, I can't risk her life. And then we kind of cut to, and this is this little bit is probably my only criticism of this episode, or the writing we've had so far. So we know that for whatever reason she's not dilating, she's not giving birth at the moment. There's nothing really to suggest that her life's in danger, because there are ways, I think they could get the baby out, maybe, I don't know. But so basically see Laenor go to her dragon. I mean, she's in heavy labor. How this woman gets there, I don't know, but she's like bleeding. And she requests of the dragon, like a dragon, as she foreshadowed, a dragon rider's death, which is basically, they burn you alive kind of thing. So she gives the command to her dragon. You can see her dragon, it's quite sweet. It's like, doesn't want to do it. And it's like, and then she's like commanding her dragon. Daemon comes out after her and is calling to her, because he wants to obviously talk her out of it. But he basically just gets a bit too late, and the dragon burns her, sets her on fire, but he basically incinerates her. So Daemon just lost his wife and his unborn child. And again, you can actually see he's actually really, really upset by this. He's actually quite devastated, in contrast to when he murdered his first wife. So again, you kind of get a feeling that, whatever they had, it was genuine. Now, whether he was, like, say, fully in love with her, probably not. But what he felt is actually quite very, very genuine. So it's very sad. Meanwhile, we kind of sort of see, really the relationship between Alicent and Rhaenyra and the king. So they're in the usual sort of, board discussing the affairs of the realm. There's rumblings, there's like war kicking off in the Stepstones again. And Alicent is very much, and the king's like, oh, can I ever be rid of this place? And Rhaenyra's like, well, we should have fortified it. Daemon won us this place. We should have done this. We should have put a garrison in there, blah, blah, blah. And Alicent's like, well, that's too expensive. We couldn't afford to do that. And then you've got Rhaenyra going, well, war's even more expensive. But basically every point, whether it's big or small. So again, they're talking about a land dispute previous to that. And Alicent's like, well, they can deal with it locally. And Rhaenyra's like, no, actually, this could lead to this family fight with this family. We should look into it. So basically every point, they just disagree on everything. And we basically see now that Alicent is very much sort of in charge or driving a lot of the discussions and decisions now, because the king is continuing to deteriorate. He looks very, very ill in this episode. We find that he's actually previously obviously lost his fingers. Now he's lost his whole arm. He's very thin. He's losing his hair. He really is not long for this world. So we just kind of see all the relationships just deteriorating. And Alicent meets with Lord Laris, who's Harwin's brother, Lionel's son, who we've seen previously sort of stir in the pot. He was the one who sort of, said to Alicent in the first instance that Rhaenyra was lying about her her intactness, shall we say. And Alicent's basically just, talking to him about her frustrations and how no one supports her and no one has her back. And if her father was there, he'd, or basically Lionel's not impartial. And Larry says, well, your father wouldn't be impartial either. She goes, no, but he backed me up. That's how she says, I don't care if he's not impartial as long as the impartiality lands in my favor. So from this triggers a terrible sequence of events where Laris goes to the dungeons and jails and basically recruits people who are going to be killed anyway, or hung or whatever for crimes, has their tongues removed and basically sends them off to kill Harwin and Lionel, which will then open the door for Otto Hightower to be able to come back as the king's right-hand man and have that support for Alicent. So this happens. They basically go to the castle, they start a fire and say Harwin and Lionel were killed in the fire. And then Alicent hears about this and goes to Laris, and she's very distraught. She's upset. And he's just basically said, well, you said this, so I've made it happen. And, one day, that's you kind of owe me. And she's distraught. She goes, well, I never meant for this to happen. I never meant for you to. And he's like, well, too late. It's happened now. So she's obviously distraught about that she's caused the death of Lionel, who's basically a good man, has always been very good and down the line, and Harwin, who's obviously the father of Rhaenyra's children. So on the back of Rhaenyra's son asking whether he's a bastard or not, Rhaenyra was originally talking to Laenor and saying, no, we're going to stay, we're going to face the storm. We know everybody's plotting against us. There's rumors everywhere that they're not your children. And he initially suggests, well, maybe we should get out, before the storm hits. And she's like, no, we're going to stay. But with even her own son saying this to her now, she makes the decision that they should leave and they'll go to their own castle kind of thing. And you basically sort of see her and her family and Laenor all leaving, which potentially is a really bad decision, because Rhaenyra's decision to stay was always that she has her father's ear as much as Alicent does and kind of help control the narrative. Now she's made this decision to leave. Obviously, Alicent has full control of the court and the king. So this could be the real first misstep that Rhaenyra's made on a big scale. And this is kind of where it ends. We sort of see Daemon consoling his daughters once they find out that their mothers died. So which kind of, I guess, leaves it open for Daemon to come back and maybe he'll go to Rhaenyra. We don't know. But anyway, so a lot happening in this episode. And again, I think it's one of those sort of set up episodes that really now kind of, based on what Laris has done, we're kind of at the point of no return after murdering Lionel. And things are really going to snowball now with, say, Rhaenyra choosing to leave. So, yeah, great episode. Great to see the characters evolving, how Daemon has changed and how he will react actually to, because generally he's sort of character, doesn't react well to loss or people that he cares about. As much as he's callous, he can be incredibly loyal if he actually loves someone. So he's like the sort of the polar opposites. If he doesn't care about you, he doesn't care about you. But if he does, I think it can have quite big repercussions on what he chooses to do next or how he behaves. Now, whether he's he's got to protect his daughters or whether he goes back to being much more cold and getting power again to help look after his daughters, time will tell. But the tension is really starting. Well, I mean, it's been there, but it's really, really sort of taking hold now. I can't wait for the next episode. Obviously, we're halfway through the season, and so much has happened. It's still a great show. I'm still loving it. The thing I was worried about was bringing in the new actresses, but they done well. I mean, say one looks more like her predecessor than the other did, but actually it didn't detract from me. I still really enjoyed it. I think it's going to take a few episodes for them to find their feet, the same as it did with the younger actresses. It took a few episodes for us to get to grips with those characters. So far they're still doing a really good job. I'm just loving it. I can't wait for the next episode, and really where the series 1 is going to finish, because all the threads and the, with this Laris coming in and stirring, and now he's sort of setting out his stall. It's really should be really, really interesting. So great stuff. Check out House of the Dragon, as I say, Mondays in the UK on Sky and Now TV, and on obviously HBO in the States, and that airs on a Sunday. So if you've been on the fence, take the plunge. You won't be disappointed. Obviously, we're getting to that time of year. We've got some new things coming out. October tends to be new season time. I talked about this on Wednesday's Facebook. Something I'm really excited for is the new Hellraiser film. Clive Barker managed to get the rights back to his franchise, which obviously at the tail end of the franchise, it really went off a cliff. I really enjoyed the first 2 films. The third one I liked, but it wasn't quite there for me. And then from that point onwards, they were just sort of B movies with the Cenobites or Pinhead just sort of shoved into them. They weren't even Hellraiser stories. So to see the trailer that hit from Hulu, it looks amazing. They've developed the box and how the box looks, and depending on the shape of the box is like a different level that you've achieved, almost like the circles of hell kind of thing. And we've seen our first images of the new Pinhead, who I think is now a woman. And I know there's lots of eye rolling, and I am there where I can't stand it when characters are race swapped or sex swapped for the sake of it. And Doug Bradley is just a legend. He's a lexicon in horror culture, pop culture, for his portrayal of Pinhead, and I love his version of it. What I will say, though, is this is actually going back to the source material. So a few people complaining don't realise that Pinhead was actually described as a feminine character in the novella, The Hellbound Heart. They never come out and say it's woman, but they do say that she has a very feminine, like a little girl's voice and long fingernails. So it's always implied that Pinhead was a female, even though Cenobites are, asexual, I guess, or non-binary, whatever term we want to use these days. But the trailer looked great. There's a few slight changes to canon, where in the sort of original Hellraiser films, it was very Kirsty opened the box, but she didn't know what it was. And in the second one, the doctor had the girl who solves puzzles, and Pinhead basically says, it's not hands that summon us, it's desire. Whereas in this one, it seems to be, doesn't matter who opens the box. When you open the box, it actually sort of cuts you and takes a sample of your blood. And once it's got your blood, that's it. You're in trouble. They're coming for you no matter what. And I'm kind of okay with that, as long as it works within the story and actually sort of makes sense within the story that we're going to get. I think what was good to see is it doesn't look like it's just a pure remake of the original Hellraiser. It does look like a different story, a new story. And I don't know how much origin is going to be in there, but yeah, just the look and the sort of tone of the trailer, the colorization, and the changes of the box all looked really, really good. So when I initially heard they were going to do a new Hellraiser film, I was like, just groaning inside, just going, this is going to be awful. And then you sort of they've got a female lead. But like I say, it does go back to the source material. But actually seeing the trailer has really given me some confidence that we might get something good here. Fingers crossed. So, I think that's coming out, I think it's the 7th of October on Hulu. So whether we'll get that on Disney Plus here, I don't know, because it's not really, because our Disney Plus here, we do have more adult and, sort of 15 plus films and TV shows on our Disney Plus here, because we don't have Hulu, or whether it'll appear on Sky. Don't know yet, trying to find out. But really excited for that one. There's a new show coming out at the end of October on Prime that's written by Stephen Moffat and has Peter Capaldi starring. It's called The Devil's Hour. And so I've watched the trailer a couple of times and I still can't tell you what it's about, whether it's time travel or supernatural or both. We're not sure, but I'm really intrigued by this. Hopefully some more information will come out, or some more trailers will come out from Prime as we go through October. But obviously these are all sort of Halloween type or supernatural type shows coming out to coincide with Halloween. So again, that's what I'm excited for, but would love to have a bit more understanding of what it's about. But Capaldi's a great actor. Like Malcolm Tucker is like one of my all-time favorite characters ever from The Thick of It, where he's a very, very sweary advisor. Absolutely love that character to death. And then obviously he was a great doctor, didn't have much material to work with, and unfortunately some pretty piss poor stories, but a great actor. He was in one of my all-time favorites of Torchwood, the Children of Earth. He was a politician in that, and obviously he appeared in a Doctor Who episode with David Tennant. So but yeah, he's done lots of things. If you go right back in the day when he was young, he was in The Lair of the White Worm with Hugh Grant, which is a Bram Stoker story. Very cheesy, very 80s. I think it's Ken Russell as yes, it's all a bit surreal, but yeah, great actor. So Stephen Moffat can be a bit hit and miss, as we know. His early series of Sherlock were great, and say he's Doctor Who writing tenure, bit hit and miss, especially the last few seasons with Capaldi. But I don't know how much of that was sort of what he was being told he had to write about, or what and the message, as opposed to his quality of writing. So yeah, I think watch that space on that one and see if we get a few more trailers coming out. But yeah, definitely intrigued by that. And let's see. And then I think we've got the final Halloween Kills coming out, which is the third part of the trilogy of the remake of Halloween with Jamie Lee Curtis. Again, I've watched the previous two. I quite liked them. I thought the first Halloween was better than the last. Halloween Kills was the second one, sorry. And then we got the last one coming out. So yeah, but I'm intrigued to see how it all ties together, how it ends, and does Michael Myers finally die? Probably not. But yeah, another one sort of bit like schlocky horror, which I'm looking forward to. So yeah, there's a few things on the horizon. Very much in October with the Halloween films, and yeah, so take a look at those, hunt out the trailers, let me know what you think. Let me know what you think on this week's shows, anything you're looking forward to coming up that you might want me to review. Pop it in the comments, or indeed you can follow me on Twitter, Andy LDM50, if you want to get in. So as always, as the banner says, please like, share and subscribe. I really appreciate the support, and likes really do help. And if you can share and push it out there to help grow the audience, because once I get to a certain number, I'd love to be able to get to a point where I can do some live streaming and interact with you guys in the chat. But need a few more subscribers yet before I think we can go there. But as always, you can find me on the Spacebook on Monday, where we'll be doing our listed and going back in time to review another show from times gone by or film. And on Wednesday afternoons, again with the Spacebook, we talk about what's up and coming, what we just watched, what we're looking forward to. So that's where you can find me each week. And as always, with the roundup, and I dropped my first of my Atomic Rewinds on Wednesday as well, which was Dread. So do go check that out. That's a bit of a work in progress, but hopefully I quite like the formula. And the next one coming up will be, of course, obviously, Atomic Blonde. But I've got a bit of a busy weekend this weekend, so hopefully I can get that done and out next week. But not sure on the day yet. But anyway, that will be coming soon as well. So as always, thanks for watching. Do like, and I will see you again next week. Thanks. Bye-bye.